what can happen is you can get so caught up in doing every little detailed step of your project plan and being very task focused and very operational because you just want to be off getting things done. What I want you to do is think about what are the key milestones in this project. Now, some milestones are really obvious and really clear. So if it's a system, usually there's a go live. If there's some sort of deliverable, it's usually, the delivery point of that element of the project. But what I want you to start to think about are what are the milestones earlier on in the project so that you can tell if you're on track or not a little bit earlier, and you can be making those adjustment points a bit earlier. Now, you don't want too many of these. Depending on the length of the project, I would pick anywhere between probably maybe 3 and 6 key milestones, and really focus down on what they are and where they should be. So as an example, you might have a whole lot of interviews and focus groups at the beginning of a project. You might have the completion of those as one of your milestones. Now, where those early milestones become really valuable is if you miss that one. So for example, the workshops have to be completed by the end of January and the project's due at the end of March. If by the end of January you haven't completed your workshops, then you can start to assess whether or not you're actually going to be able to complete the rest of the work by the end of March. And you can have really realistic conversations about that. And you can think, well, we didn't get this on time. What makes us think we're going to get the next part on time? And how are we going to do it? So, do we have to put more resources on it, or is there some other thing we have to do, or do we have to get our stakeholders involved to maybe work a little bit more intensively? But at least you can be recognising that early and having really open conversations about that with evidence behind why you're doing it. Now, sometimes there is a little bit of a tendency to not want to admit it's not running on time. But I assure you that you are better off admitting that you're a little bit behind on an early milestone where you've still got some time and maybe some strategies to catch it up, than admitting to everyone the day before it was due that you're actually not going to hit the final deadline. So usually, in my experience, people don't like surprises. So good project management, I always say, is about minimising surprises. So we want everything to be open, we want everything to be as proactive as possible, and we want to avoid all the surprises. Now, depending on your project, you'll have varying levels of deliverables. Some projects are very, very clear. The deliverable will be a report or a piece of software or hardware or something. But sometimes it's not always that obvious. So what I want you to think about when you're setting up your project is, what does the end of the project look like? What does success look like? What am I going to be handing to someone? Or if I move on to the next project, what are the people left behind working in maybe a business as usual capacity going to have as leftover evidence of the completion of the project that maybe they're going to be continuing on with? So for example, if your project is to roll out a training activity for a group of staff, then maybe your end deliverable is actually around some sort of training needs analysis and then updating that with the completion of the activities, or a training plan which is current to a specific point, and then maybe you've even thought, well, the next stage could look like this, and you're handing that over to someone. So think about what it is, particularly in those projects which they aren't particularly clear, because you want everyone in your team early on in the project and as they're progressing through the project being really clear what it is that they've got to deliver at the end of it as well. It makes it so much easier, and it tends to avoid all that rushing around at the last minute when you realise that you were supposed to write a report and you'd done all this work and left the report right till the end. So they're the sorts of things that you want to avoid.